now go to the second company that's presenting today, which is Phoenix Copper. Phoenix has an asset in the USA that covers 23 square kilometers, where it's focused on developing a base and precious metals mine. You might have noticed there's been a meteoric rise in the share price from 5.75 pennies in April to 29p today, just under 30 actually, which has reflected some pretty strong announcements in the last couple of months. We're very pleased to have joining us today Marcus Edwards-Jones, the Executive Chairman, and Ryan McDermott. If both of you gentlemen could turn your cameras on and turn your microphones on as well. And Ryan is joining us from Idaho, by the way, just for some background for everybody. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, good morning to those of you who might be listening from the United States. I'm Marcus Edwards-Jones, and I became chairman of Phoenix Copper just as we IPO'd back in 2017 at 40p a share. And just before I go into the presentation, I'd just like to go through a few reasons why one would, when faced with a variety of sectors to invest in, why one would choose the mining sector, and indeed why one would choose a small company like Phoenix, which at the moment isn't making any profits or generating any cash, over a large company like Rio Tinto or Barrick Gold. The first thing is that I've been focusing on the mining sector for a while, on the basis that it's one of the few sectors where you're not going to get your lunch eaten by some new invention or some cutthroat company like Amazon coming along and destroying your retail business model, or Airbnb coming along and destroying your hotel chain, or somebody like sort of direct line insurer destroying your network of insurance brokerships, or a company like Netflix effectively ruining your pay-per-view TV model. One thing that the world is running out of is copper, and that's our main focus. And there are various statistics around, but an electric bus contains something like 814 pounds of copper. And I've seen various surveys which show that if all vehicles in the world were produced as electric ones, that would lead to a 22% increase in copper demand. And that's before you've looked at funding all the charging stations and associated infrastructure that has to go with copper. And the world is running out of copper which can be mined at decent grades and low costs, and there are not many such projects going into production in the near future. And we're a 4.5-hour drive just up the road from the largest copper mine, in fact the largest mine in North America, which is the Bingham Canyon Kennecott mill near Salt Lake City, which has been in production since 1902. We're also involved in gold and silver, as we'll come to discuss. So if our punt on copper proves to be mistaken, and it certainly hasn't been the easiest ride since we IPO'd, which is why our share price has been so weak, then we've got some optionality with our gold assets. And Paul Milcrease has done some great research on gold and its relationship with silver, which we'll also will come on to in a minute. But just to give you an illustration, if you ever go and visit the battleship Alabama, which was built in 1942 at a cost of $80 million, that was the equivalent at the 1942 gold price of around 2.25 million ounces of gold. If you multiply that by the current gold price, that's $4 billion. So that's quite a good example of how gold can protect you while governments are printing money. So the second reason, why would you not just invest in a company that was already producing copper, is that our market cap is only £18 million, even after the strong share price performance over the last few weeks. If we manage to get into production, some of the modelling that we've been doing internally shows some really quite decent numbers, and our current contained metal in the measured, indicated, and inferred reserves we have is approaching it's north of $1.5 billion. So the upside, if we get it right, is really quite considerable. We're also on that sort of Rocky Mountain Andes axis, where there are just giant mineral deposits stretching from Chile up to Canada into the Yukon. We've got a very attractive position on the Idaho Cobalt belt. Cobalt is currently selling for $28,500 a ton. Idaho is one of the few places in the world where cobalt has been mined in its own right. There's enough of it there to justify building a dedicated cobalt mine, rather than mining it as a byproduct of copper or nickel. So we have that exposure to what is also an essential metal for producing batteries for the green energy revolution. But that's enough of that. I think we'll just now go into the presentation, which I'm going to load up, if I can do that. Here we are. So, disclaimer, and we're developing. We own currently 80% of the Empire Mine district, and we've been doing. We've all done exploration and production in lots of different places, and a good place to start is somewhere that was mined, where there's already been mining. We've got since we've IPO'd, we've added substantially to the property, and we've got 5.5 kilometers of polymetallic strike length of mineralization at Empire, which has got several metals in it. Copper, you can see down there, we've got 130,000 tons of measured, indicated, and inferred. That's currently worth, the current crop is $819 million. Gold, we've got 343,000 ounces. That's worth currently $622 million at the current gold price. And the silver is worth getting on for 190 million at the current price. I was talking earlier about the optionality of the project, and we've currently got two prospects for early cash flow. We don't want to make the mistake that a lot of companies do, where they get into production, but the long-suffering shareholders, particularly the ones who took the biggest risk by investing in at the beginning, have ended up with a very minuscule percentage of the shares. I'm thinking of one of our neighbours, Nevada Copper, which, if you look at their share register, is owned mainly by finance providers, and the same with SolGold, which is a colossal project being developed in Ecuador. It'll be a huge copper mine when it's eventually built. But the people who put up the money to start it all off have got a very small amount of skin in the game. So we've got Red Star Silver and the copper gold silver open pit project. which are both in a race to be the first of the two projects we currently envisage generating cash from in late 2021 in order to fund the much bigger, the exploration of the much larger asset we've got underneath, which is basically a giant copper molybdenum porphyry, which we believe has been is the source of all the mineral deposits in our area, which, by the way, includes 6 kilometers of gold strike at Navarre Creek, which we're also exploring. Here's our drilling program. As Ryan will tell you in a minute, we've got drilling activity at Red Star on the silver lead deposit, going on all through the summer. Metals channel sampling and metal processing. So there'll be lots of news flow coming from that. We'll have a resource update. We hope to have some kind of resource update on Red Star, maybe end of Q3, Q4. And on the Empire pit, one of the reasons why we've been doing well is we had a major result on the metallurgical test work where we recovered gold. We've got 97% recovery on our gold in less than 6 hours using ammonium thiosulfate, which is much more environmentally friendly and therefore much easier to permit than cyanide. So we're very excited about that. So we immediately moved to drill up there, and that's being drilled, and samples are going off to the lab and being both tested for grade and for gold recovery. Highlights. So we're basically targeting projects that can be brought into production with modest capex requirements. So we would hope to put a silver mine into production for something less than sort of $35 million all in. We think we can do that mainly with debt or streaming rather than heavily dilutive issues of more shares to our long-suffering shareholders. We're in Idaho. We've all worked in some pretty exciting places, but we felt that this opportunity was a much safer place to risk ours and our shareholders' money. Some corporate structure. We've got 62 million shares in issues, 10 million warrants and options, 11 million warrants and options, 73 million fully diluted. So our market cap at 30p fully diluted is getting on for £20 million. Shareholders, we're very lucky to have, although we're not technically an institutional stock, we're very lucky to have some very supportive long. Martin Hughes is a very, very close friend of mine, and Keith and Hiscock and Paul Milpriest.
Marcus, can I just interrupt you there? The sound is just cutting in and out a bit. Right. I suggest you speak a bit closer to the microphone, into the microphone. Okay. I'll also remind you that we've got about another 15 minutes in total, including...
Yeah, I've nearly finished my bit, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, Mark, you may have seen that during when our share price was down in wrist-slashing territory at 10p, we managed to raise money at 15p a share, and that was Martin topping up his holdings. So we're very grateful for him for doing that. And we've got some other very supportive long-term shareholders who we think will make it quite easy for us to continue funding this. Management buyers, I've already talked about on myself. Ryan is Idaho born and bred, and I'm going to hand over to him in a minute. And he has worked all over the world, including in Russia for Kinross, up north of Magadan. So he's quite glad to be back in Idaho. Ryan's grandfather actually worked on the mine at Mackay, at the Empire Mine, which closed in 1942 when all the miners were conscripted into the US military. Not hastily assembled bunch of promoters. Richard Wilkins, our finance director, I met him in Uzbekistan over 20 years ago, and I was an investor in Oxus Gold, which produced over 500,000 ounces of gold and 2 million ounces of silver in Uzbekistan. He also put in a mine into production with Roger Turner, who's further down there. And again, I've known Roger for 20 years, and they're very experienced, safe pair of hands. We've got a great team. Lenny Wilkes, head of our ESG program, she's also from Idaho and a very respected member of the local community. She's been very helpful to us. Dennis is taking care of investor relations, but he's also very good on the technical side. Andre and Jason. Jason is the representative of XGen on the board, who own the other 20%. Andre is very invaluable on legal and financial matters. We've got a great board, and I'm now going to hand over to Ryan to go through the projects in a bit more detail. Thank you all for listening.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Marcus. Let me load the presentation. Okay, as Marcus said,
This is slide 9 we were up to, Ryan.
Yes. As Marcus said, we are located in Idaho. As you can see on the right-hand side of the screen there, our properties or claim blocks, all in Custer County and Lemhi County. Essentially, we started with what you can see in, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the blue area is patented or private property, surrounded by unpatented claims, both in the Empire area and at Navarre Creek. A couple of key points there. What I pointed out in blue being private property, and that is where the core Empire copper, gold, and Red Star properties are located. Clear advantages to permitting when operating on private property in Idaho. In fact, we are exempt from NEPA, for instance, so long as we stay, keep activities on the private property. Let's talk about silver and lead. So the Red Star deposit is located about 300 meters northwest of the main Empire zone. And then another 1,000 meters to the west of that on the same trend is the historic White Knob, Bluebird, and Horseshoe mines. They all appear to be very similar in mineralogy, very similar in structural complexity, and we control all of that ground. Starting most importantly with Red Star, which we are currently drilling with diamond core HQ diameter. We're on hole 7 of a 20-hole program, and anxiously awaiting assays, as everybody is. There's a good picture. So on the left of the screen, that is the main Empire mine area. And you can see as you move to the right, where Red Star is in association to the main empire, and then the historic White Knob and Bluebird mine. So as you can see from that photograph, all of these projects, although they're separate projects, are within several kilometers of one another. And it's important to point out all of these projects are within a 10-minute drive from Mackay, where our office core shed is located. So it makes a very nice efficient day when we don't have to drive an hour to a project. We'll zoom this in here a little bit. So if you look in the center of your screen, the large red kidney-shaped feature, that is the Empire oxide open pit, proposed open pit. You can see how it's situated on private property. Again, just north of that is the Red Star. The Red Star actually sits just inside the patented land. And then north of those projects are the White Knob, Horseshoe, Bluebird. You can see all of the hammer, hammer symbols. Those are former mines and prospects, and the blue lines are basically general structure and a description of how the mineralization occurs in this deposit. Here's a good photo of the Red Star vein. See the bounded by the red lines on the side. This is an andradite magnetite vein. It stands out very clearly in contact with the granite. This outcrop is the only outcrop that exists on the hill. Every other outcrop we make via road building. So it has been an exercise in road building and structural geology to figure out exactly what's happening with Red Star. As I mentioned before, we're planning a 20-hole diamond program, which is going on right now, with the intent to update the resource at the end of this year. Based on what we know from the surface, and of course it's just from the surface now, if this goes to underground, it'll be in the 450 to 500 ton a day production scenario. The information that we're gaining from Red Star, like I said before, is directly applicable, we believe, to the projects that we have to the north. So all of the geologic information, the mineralogic information, we're carrying on as we continue with exploration up and down the trend.
Ryan, sorry to hurry you along, but can I give you a 2-minute warning, please?
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, Red Star resource, inferred resource, 100,000 tons at about 16 ounces per ton equivalent. Let's jump into very quickly the main Empire mine resource, which we updated this year. Our modeler modeled each of the metals, copper, gold, zinc, silver, separately, and combined those models because we've found that each of those metals occur on a different trend. And the result is we increased the overall resource, 56% increase in gold, for instance, 13% increase in silver, 11% in copper, and we're looking at about 19.3 million metric tons of total resource as it currently stands. And then very quickly, if I have time, exciting piece of news. In the course of doing our regular metallurgical test work, our metallurgist was able to find a non-cyanide or a cyanide alternative reagent called ammonium thiosulfate. We ran some laboratory tests, and it's showing 97% plus gold recovery, very low consumption rate over a very short period of time. We are continuing metallurgical testing, and will become more detailed as we move into a pilot test, and we'll certainly have additional news about that. Do we have time to take a couple of questions?
Yes, Richard, we'll start the questions, yeah.
Yes, we do have time for about 2 questions. I'm going to summarize this in not a question, but more of a comment. There's a lot of interest in the Red Star project, and obviously the updated information that you see, the news flow coming through in Q3, Q4, that seems to be of an interest to a lot of people. I think you outlined what the capex might be, but I just to pass that point over. So I've got 2 questions I've got time to ask you. The first one is, why do you think the market cap is so low, even after the recent rise, versus the large resources of copper, gold, and silver?
Do you want to handle that, Marcus?
Yes. Well, I think the problem was that the model that we originally had was based on doing an open pit copper mine and saving the gold and silver for later. And while it was the numbers were attractive, the way we wanted to do it was to really fund most of it as much as possible with debt. So that was we were unable to do that. But since we then discovered the Red Star outcrop and we remodeled it with the gold included, which wasn't included in the 2019 resource, well, not nearly as much of it. The story is where we've got much more optionality, and the market seems to have woken up a bit to that, but we're still below our 40p IPO price.
Okay, so I'm going to just ask a sort of associated question. That you mentioned that you wanted to avoid wanted to avoid shareholder dilution if possible. How can you achieve this, and what are your longer term aspirations versus debt funding versus equity issuance?
Well, I think the sort of numbers we might see if the gold and silver prices stay where they are and the copper price recovers would mean that we would be able to pay back debt with quite an attractive interest rate and maybe a modest amount of convertibility or warrants attached to it in probably less than 3 years. So, and I think with interest rates where they are, more and more people are looking for instruments like this in order to generate some income. So I don't think it will be as difficult as it might have been, say, 5 or 10 years ago.
Marcus, thank you very much. I've got one very specific question, then we're going to have to close. It relates to the lab pilot testing at Salt Lake City.
Yes.
And it would be good to have definitive timeline as opposed to a more vague answer, possibly, if you could possibly provide it.
We are currently shipping bulk samples to the lab. The laboratory anticipates that they'll have the larger pilot testing on all of the ore types within the pit completed in August to September timeframe.
Okay,
thank you very much. We have other questions.
It's going to be a busy week next week. And did you mention the website photos, Ryan?
Oh, yes. Please, everyone, go to our website, phoenixcopperlimited.com. The photo gallery has photographs of the core that we've recovered from Red Star.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. We will have to move on. We are going to have another poll. Again, it takes about a minute, please, to look at it. Please do scroll down. And the supplementary questions on Felix, we will basically deal with, as Keith mentioned earlier, in a separate session. Thank you very much.